Wow, so we really ended up with that clunker of an ending, huh? How spectacularly the final of Killing Eve failed is surprising because it didn't just manage to hit on the most problematic trope in the woman love woman media lexicon, it also managed to simultaneously make it feel underwhelming and empty. How did we end up here? When it comes to woman love woman content, it is a rare movie or TV show with queer leads that has mainstream success. Shows like Batwoman, Legends of Tomorrow, Black Lightning, Hightown, even Dickinson and Gentleman Jack, with their queer women protagonists centering their queer love as the primary love story, haven't had the same meteoric success that Killing Eve had. Perhaps the only other show to have the same reach is the ensemble show Orange is the New Black, and that was not a show that centered around two queer protagonists in the same way that Killing Eve did. Pretty much every other TV show that features a woman love woman storyline is doing so with secondary characters. Killing Eve was an incredibly rare show that caught the attention of wider mainstream audiences. People were talking about it, people were invested. For once, it wasn't just the small, vocal woman love woman shipping community.
One surprise fan that we've just discovered of Killing Eve.
Yes?
Prince William, the future King of England.
So I heard about this.
It had celebrities like Taylor Swift and Billie Eilish vocalizing their love for the show publicly.
Oh, God. Okay, so Killing Eve...
Jodie, oh my God, I have such a crush on you, girl. Jeez.
The tension was well earned too. The psychological cat and mouse with the crackling chemistry of Eve and Villanelle was a heady combination that enticed queer and straight audiences alike. Having it feature two women at the heart of the show to make it about the burgeoning relationship, to make them textured, complicated, and not necessarily moral or good, while still remaining the protagonists, was what made the show exciting and new. It had Taylor Swift saying, "I don't think we've seen such a lovable psychopath. Oh God, it's so intoxicating. We've only ever seen this kind of endearing badness in men." People were excited to see how the show would build on itself, how it would explore their dynamic. It's just so unfortunate that the promise of the first season ultimately got bogged down in poor execution of an aimless plot, a relentless need to keep Eve and Villanelle apart, and, of course, that ending. While Season 1 was generally received as exciting and fresh, in no small part due to the Eve and Villanelle dynamic, reviews for Season 2 and 3 complained of plot that tread water and the lack of what made the show, that is, having Eve and Villanelle on screen together and their pull-push dynamic. While I enjoyed the first 3 seasons myself, I don't disagree with this criticism. It felt like they didn't know how to build on the first season, nor did they have enough of a roadmap to help drive the show, so instead they meandered a bit here and a bit there. For me, it was mostly enjoyable, so it didn't rankle. Being a shipper at heart, my interest is primarily in the Eve and Villanelle dynamic. Any episode that had them on screen together was far more interesting than the actual plot surrounding the 12, which at best was only mildly interesting to me. The central plot of a group of shadowy people ordering hits on those that got in their way, who also probably had their hands in MI6, and the journey of the ex-agent who would bring them down, in and of itself, was not anything particularly groundbreaking, but it served a suitable vehicle with which we could see Eve and Villanelle's journey take form. By the end of Season 3, it appeared that they were both in the same place where they were finally ready to come together. Eve appeared to have reconciled that she had this darkness in her that drew her to Villanelle, and Villanelle realized that she wanted out of her work for the 12 and seemed ready for change. Despite admitting that they'd probably consume each other if they were together, they still both turned around on the bridge because something about their bond felt inevitable. My hope had been that this moment would see the final season pivot away from the formula that had weighed it down in previous seasons, where both ladies were off on their own journeys and only reuniting at the end of the season. Alas, the potential of the Season 3 finale was immediately undercut. We see Eve sporting the return of some puzzling hostility towards Villanelle given where we'd landed in the last season that isn't explained or even really resolved. It was a plot device used to drive a wedge between them that lasts until the final episode as a way, I assume, to keep them in that pull-push situation, but at this point it was repetitive, tired, and didn't make sense. The whole plot for hunting down the 12 honestly didn't hold my attention enough for the narrative to take root, and I'm not exactly sure why so much was spent developing the character of Pam when her presence didn't seem to serve a purpose that couldn't have been achieved with a smaller role. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed her character, but Constantine could have just as well been killed by someone else. I had assumed her importance must be related to how she was going to usurp Villanelle's place as an assassin, or in how the final moments would play out. But by the time she declined Carolyn's invitation to work for her, her presence felt like a dead end. The same could be said for the character of Gunn, where it felt like her presence in the story was there to help divert Villanelle away from the action for a bit, without there being any real substance to the detour. So, by the time we see Villaneve together as they journey back to take out the 12, we've spent a great deal of time turning in circles with little plot development for the season, and far too much time spent on keeping our ladies apart. Along with a cross-dressing Jesus, the opportunity to finally see the two of them working in harmony together and the tenderness of their road trip was the absolute highlight of the season, but it was also laced with that uncertainty that comes with knowing that one or both of them would probably die. The idea of death was telegraphed with no subtlety, so it sure felt like it was inevitable. The real twist would have been if they had both lived. The killing of the 12 revealed no great moment. We never got to see them. It's a pretty straightforward sequence of events. The way it was framed felt anticlimactic, given we'd spent 4 seasons leading to this. And in true bury your gaze fashion, as our ladies are in an embrace mere hours after they finally took their relationship to the next level, Villanelle is shot while Eve gets to survive, knowing that she's lost the only person who understood and accepted her as she was. Gee, haven't been here before. What fun. What I don't understand is what purpose Villanelle's death was meant to serve and what it was trying to say. It's never explicitly stated as to why Carolyn killed Villanelle, nor does Villanelle's death seem to have any greater narrative purpose. It felt like a punishment for Villanelle not successfully changing who she was enough after her failed attempt to stop killing people. If that is the case, then the problem is that the show was never a morality tale. Almost everyone in the show was bad in some way. If her death was some kind of come-uppance, then all of them deserve to die, not just Villanelle. No, this was a story about knowing and accepting all parts of yourself, even the dark parts of you, and accepting that those parts of you are still lovable. We see this in how Eve learns to accept that she has this dark side that is longing for expression, and we see it in how Villanelle tries and fails to become quote-unquote good, but ultimately using her badness to kill the greater evil, the 12. So to punish her specifically with death when she finally had something to live for, had finally connected with her emotions through her relationship with Eve is off the mark. It's confusing. It doesn't make sense. It once again leans into that terrible bury your gaze narrative where the queer lady has to die in order to what? Punish her for being accepting of who she is, for daring to love and be loved while being a terrible person? To make the ending more dramatic, to be more quote-unquote realistic, because a happy ending is somehow saccharine and not how things work. It has the same kind of vibe to it as the ending of I Care a Lot, a movie with another likable yet terrible human being, also queer, who, in the moment of her triumph, is gunned down by her past just because she clearly can't be allowed to live given her past transgressions. It follows the tradition of making queer people pay. That isn't to say that just because a character is queer that she shouldn't be killed. It just needs to make sense and be justified and very carefully weighed up within the larger context of Women Love Women media. As the bullets pierced the water, even the dismay at seeing Villanelle die as Eve watches on fell flat. It was so underwhelming and cliched, so boring, predictable to kill her off that, rather than being moved by her death, I was annoyed. I wasn't upset at seeing her die because the death didn't land. It felt two-dimensional, emotionally empty, unearned. It needed to have meaning, but it didn't. And then, with a wailing scream from Eve, who must now somehow go on alone, the screen fades to black with barely a moment to let the death settle, and it's done. The season could have been so much more. We could have gotten to see what I think we all wanted to see, and that is if Villaneve could coexist together. Would they have brought the worst out in each other, destroyed each other, or would they have found a balance? The inherent conflict in these two trying to work together on a goal would have been so much more interesting than their forced separation. If Villanelle's death had to be the conclusion, show us how their relationship was toxic and self-destructive, and use that to motivate her death. If Caroline had to be the killer, give her a real motivation. I don't know, reveal that she is the head of the 12. Have Pam be the assassin to justify her taking up so much screen time. Write the season in a way that worked to an explosive finale that had impact. And maybe, just maybe, consider that Villaneve could have lived. I can't help thinking of Phoebe Waller-Bridge, creator and season 1 showrunner, who said this of the first season ending. Every moment in this show exists so that the two women can end up alone in a room together. Really, it would have been a betrayal to the audience if they didn't come together in the end. I think this could well apply to how Killing Eve should have finished, and I think that Laura Neal, the season 4 showrunner, didn't get the memo. So I guess, in the end, we were betrayed. What do you think about how Killing Eve ended? Comment below. Until next time, lady lovers.